Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something that sounds pretty futuristic, quantum graph neural networks.
QGNNs.
QGNNs,
Yeah.
okay, I like that. So we're going to be diving into a paper all about this.
Right.
But before we go full quantum, can you give us like a quick refresher on what a plain old graph neural network even is? Like, I vaguely remember something about Facebook and analyzing social networks with graphs, but it's been a while.
Yeah, you're on the right track. A graph neural network, it's all about relationships and connections.
Okay.
Like, think about your Facebook feed. Each person is a dot, a node on this graph, right? And all the links between people, like friendships or follows, those are the edges.
Yeah, I get that, the connections.
Right, and a GNN, it can look at this whole tangled web and spot patterns, connections that would take us humans, like, forever to see.
Oh, interesting.
So it's super powerful for understanding complex relationships way beyond just social media, too.
That's cool. So how do we take this from like regular graphs to the quantum realm? What makes a QGNN different?
That's where the fun begins. A QGNN, it's like taking those graph ideas, but using the rules of quantum mechanics to process information. It's like instead of a normal computer, we're using a quantum computer.
Which is way, way more powerful, right?
Exactly. It's like instead of just ones and zeros, a QGNN can be in this blurry state of both at the same time.
Superposition. We learned about that last time.
Exactly, superposition. And that lets them tackle problems that would make a classical computer just like meltdown.
So it's like we're hacking reality with quantum mechanics.
Yeah, kind of. And this paper, it explores all sorts of different types of QGNNs, each with its own strengths and ways it can be applied.
It's like we've got this whole toolbox of quantum gadgets now.
Yeah, exactly. And figuring out which tool is right for which job, that's part of the challenge, but also the fun.
Okay, so let's dive into this toolbox then. What's one of these specialized QGNNs that we should know about?
Well, the paper starts by talking about these things called quantum graph recurrent neural networks, or QGRNNs.
QGRNNs. Okay, so what's so special about these?
What's cool is they're really good at understanding how quantum systems change over time. Like, imagine you could watch a movie of a quantum system.
See how it evolves, yeah.
Exactly. And a QGRNN can, like, learn the rules of the movie, see the patterns in how the system changes.
Oh, that's cool. So like predicting what it'll do next.
Exactly. The paper actually uses this example of simulating this thing called an Ising model, which is from physics.
Ising model, okay.
Yeah, it's like these little magnets interacting, and a QGRNN can learn how they behave and predict their future.
Oh, that's awesome. So QGRNNs, they're like the time travelers of the quantum world.
Haha, in a way, yeah. They can see the past, present, and future of these quantum systems.
All right. So what other QGNN tricks do we have up our sleeve?
Well, there's this other one called a quantum graph convolutional neural network, or QGCNN for short.
QGCNN, all right. Another acronym. So what makes this one stand out?
This one is interesting because it has this thing called permutation invariance.
Permutation invariance. That
Oh.
sounds like way over my head.
It sounds complicated, but it's actually a simple idea, just with a fancy name.
Okay, break it down for me.
Okay, so imagine you're looking at a picture of a cat.
Okay, a cat. I see where this is going.
You can recognize that cat, whether it's right in front of you or off to the side or even upside down, right?
Yeah, of course. It's still a cat.
Exactly. Your brain, it doesn't get fooled by the cat's position or orientation.
Okay, so what's that got to do with QGCNNs?
Well, in the same way, a QGCNN can analyze a graph, like our social network example, and understand it even if the nodes are all jumbled up. It's like it can still read the sentence even if the words are all mixed up.
Oh, wow. So it doesn't matter what order the data's in, it can still figure it out.
Exactly. That makes it super robust, able to deal with messy data and still find the patterns.
That's really cool. Okay, so we've got QGRNNs for understanding how things change over time, and QGCNNs for dealing with messy data and finding the hidden structure.
Exactly. And those are just two of the tools in this quantum toolbox.
I'm loving this toolbox. What else do we have in there?
Well, we've also got these things called quantum spectral graph convolutional neural networks, or QSGCNNs. Yeah, quite a mouthful.
QSGCNNs. Okay, so that sounds even more complicated. What's the deal with these?
What's really cool about these is they use a different kind of quantum system, one that's not just limited to ones and zeros. It can handle a whole range of values, kind of like a dimmer switch.
Oh, I see. So instead of just on or off, it's got like shades of gray.
Exactly. It's a continuous spectrum of values, which is a bit different from what we usually see in quantum computing. But the amazing thing is, even with this continuous nature, they can still do many of the same things that classical graph convolutional networks can do.
So it's like They're speaking a different language, but they're still telling the same story.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. They're using a different kind of quantum alphabet, but they're still able to analyze graphs and find those hidden connections. And the paper, it goes into how they achieve this through these processes called message passing, node updates, and nonlinearities.
Okay, well, hold on a second. Now you're just throwing out jargon. Can you unpack those terms for us non-PhD folks?
Sure, sure. Imagine you have a group of friends, right? And each friend has a piece of a secret message. They whisper their pieces to each other, sharing information based on how close they are as friends.
Okay, like a game of telephone.
Exactly. That's kind of like message passing. Then each friend takes all the whispers they've heard and updates their own understanding of the secret. That's the node update.
Makes sense.
And then the nonlinearities, they add a bit of complexity and nuance to the whole thing, like adding spices to a recipe.
Okay, so it's like a quantum game of telephone with some extra flavor.
Haha, something like that. And one of the things QSGCNNs can do with this whole process is something called spectral clustering. Imagine you have this huge social network, like millions of users,
Okay, yeah.
and you want to figure out who belongs to which groups based on their connections and interests.
So like finding the hidden communities within a network, that sounds super useful.
It is, and QSGCNNs can do this by analyzing the mathematical fingerprint of the network's connections. It's called the graph Laplacian. It's like they have this blueprint that reveals the hidden structure of the network.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So they're like digital anthropologists figuring out the social structures of the online world.
Exactly. And what's even more impressive is they can do all this even with limited quantum resources, which is really important right now.
Oh, yeah. We always hear about how hard it is to build these big quantum computers. So how are they doing all this cool stuff without having like a million qubits?
They use this clever trick called single qubit precision encoding. Instead of needing lots of qubits to represent a value, they can pack a lot of information into just one.
So they're making the most of what they've got, squeezing every bit of information out of those qubits.
Exactly. And that makes them really promising for near-term applications, even before we have those massive quantum computers everyone's waiting for.
That's really cool. So QSGCNNs, they're good at finding hidden groups. But what about that puzzle-solving task we talked about before, graph isomorphism? Can they handle that too?
They can. And it's another area where they really shine. Remember, graph isomorphism is about figuring out if two graphs, even if they look different, are actually the same structurally.
Like, are they the same puzzle, just with the pieces arranged differently?
Exactly. And for classical computers, this gets really hard really fast as the graphs get bigger. But QGNNs, especially these QSGCNNs, they have a different approach.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do they do it?
Well, imagine you apply a QSGCNN to each of the two graphs you want to compare. The output you get is like a set of energy values, a kind of unique fingerprint for each graph.
Wait, energy values? I thought we were talking about networks and structures, not like physics.
It might sound strange, but these energy values actually encode information about the graph structure.
Oh.
So to figure out if the two graphs are the same, you just compare their energy fingerprints. If the fingerprints match, boom, they're likely isomorphic.
So it's like comparing DNA to see if two people are related.
Exactly. And to make sure the comparison is really accurate, they use this statistical test called the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test. It's a way to be extra sure that the fingerprints are truly similar, not just a coincidence.
Okay, so they've got these QSGCNNs analyzing the graphs, generating energy fingerprints, and then using this fancy statistical test to compare them. So what are the results like? How good are they at solving this puzzle?
The results are really promising. QGNNs, including these QSGCNNs, are showing really high accuracy, even when dealing with large, complex graphs.
That's awesome. So we've got these QSGCNNs. They can handle continuous values. They're good at spectral clustering and finding those hidden communities. And they're rocking it at graph isomorphism. It's like we've unlocked a whole new level of quantum power.
It really is. And as we delve further into this paper, we'll uncover even more fascinating aspects of QGNNs, their potential applications, and the challenges that lie ahead in this exciting new frontier.
Welcome back, everyone. It feels
Yeah.
like we've just scratched the surface of this whole QGNN thing.
Yeah, we've covered a lot, but there's so much more to explore. What I find really cool is this paper doesn't just stop at explaining what QGNNs are.
Right.
It also kind of hints at where things might go in the future, and that's what gets me excited.
Ooh, okay. Give us a glimpse into the future. What are some of the things researchers are hoping to see?
Well, one thing they talk about is developing these hybrid methods, like Combining QGNNs with regular machine learning techniques.
So like merging the quantum and the classical.
Exactly. It's like building a bridge between those two worlds.
I can see how that would be powerful. Can you give me like a concrete example?
Sure. Imagine you're a chemist trying to design a new drug. You could use a QGNN to analyze the quantum interactions between molecules, which is like super complex.
Yeah.
And then you could take that information and feed it into a classical machine learning model to like predict how effective the drug might be.
So it's like using the QGNN to understand the fundamental quantum stuff
Hmm.
and then using regular machine learning to make it practical.
Exactly. It's all about using the right tool for the right job, and sometimes combining those tools is the best way.
That's really cool. What other exciting research directions do they mention?
Another big one is developing better ways to train QGNNs.
Oh, right, because training any kind of AI can be super computationally expensive.
Exactly. And with quantum, it's even worse. So they're looking into using these quantum optimization techniques to speed up the process.
So it's like turbocharging the training process.
Yeah, exactly. And as we get better quantum computers, this is going to become even more important.
Makes sense. So we've talked about all this amazing potential for QGNNs, but I'm sure there are also challenges, right? What are some of the hurdles researchers are facing?
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest ones, as we kind of hinted at before, is that we still don't have those big fault-tolerant quantum computers everyone's dreaming of.
Right, the hardware just isn't there yet.
Exactly. So the QGNNs we're working with now, they're still pretty small compared to the really complex problems we want to tackle eventually.
It's like we've got all these amazing ideas, but we're limited by the tools we have.
Yeah, kind of like trying to build a skyscraper with just like a hammer and nails.
Right.
We need better tools to really take this to the next level.
Makes sense. Any other challenges besides the hardware limitations?
Yeah, another big one is developing algorithms that can scale. As the problems get bigger and more complex, we need algorithms that can keep up.
Right, so it's not just about the hardware, it's also about the software, the algorithms.
Exactly. And then finally, there's the challenge of like bridging the gap between theory and practice. We've seen some awesome theoretical results with QGNNs,
Yeah.
but we need to actually show that they can solve real world problems.
So it's about taking them out of the lab and putting them to work.
Exactly. Showing that they can make a difference in fields like drug discovery, materials, science, finance, all sorts of areas.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like
Mhm.
I've learned so much about QGNNs, from the basics to the future challenges and everything in between.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you. It's always so cool to see how quantum computing is pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
A huge thank you to you and to all our listeners for joining us on this quantum adventure. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of QGNNs. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those big questions,